Well, here we are live. Welcome everyone to our session on why responsible AI needs to go beyond compliance. I am Ciro from Tech to the Rescue, and I'm really happy to be hosting this conversation alongside our partners from She Shapes AI. And responsible AI has become one of the most talked about topics in tech. But for many organizations, it still gets treated as a compliance exercise, like a set of rules to follow rather than a genuine commitment to building technology that actually serves people in the best way possible. So today, we want to explore what it looks like when organizations go beyond that minimum bar and what it actually takes to make responsible AI meaningful in practice. So it's my pleasure to be joined by Dr. Julia Stam, founder and CEO of She Shapes AI, and Lisa Talia Moretti, digital sociologist and responsible AI practitioner. So, Julia and Lisa, welcome. And I thought maybe we could start with some introductions. And Julia, maybe you could start telling us about um, She Shapes AI. What is it? Who is it for? And what problem you're trying to solve?
Yes, thank you very much, Ciro. Well, first of all, very happy to be on this webinar together with you and Lisa Talia, obviously, and really happy also about the partnership between Tech to the Rescue and She Shapes AI. So She Shapes AI. What is it? Who is it for? I would say it's for everyone. Although we're named She Shapes AI, I really want to emphasize that this is not something just for women, right? What we want to do with She Shapes AI is to really help shift the conversation about what AI can be and how it can look like and what it ultimately and whom it can serve and should serve. So when I started building She Shapes AI a little less than 2 years ago, actually, the main idea was to say AI has this huge promise, right? Everyone tells us, in particular from Silicon Valley, it's going to solve all our problems. And we also say, well, it's going to kill all of us. We're neither in one or the other corner. We're more like, we believe in this promise, but we also want to see concretely how it can be done and how it can deliver on this promise. And in order to do this, we want to spotlight the work, in particular, of female entrepreneurs who are already out there around the world using and deploying AI, developing AI to address concrete problems and not to create more problems that we don't actually need. So I'm being a little satirical here. So it's really, and why do we focus on female entrepreneurs? Well, because they are largely absent from the spotlight. When you look at conferences or when you look at AI innovations that are being that are rather popular, they very often come from the US in particular. Also, the public space of AI is very male dominated. So we just wanted to basically have a counterpoint to this and say many women are in this space, they're doing amazing work, and this is what we're spotlighting. So we're spotlighting this mainly through our awards that take place every year, where we identify a set of categories, very practical, for instance, AI in education, AI in climate, AI in health, etc. And then really ask female entrepreneurs around the world to show us what their, the innovation that they are developing and the technology that they are putting out in the world to address all of these problems. In addition to this, we're building a global community, not only of women, but actually everyone who is interested in AI for real world impact, done responsibly. And we are also running training programs, in particular for leaders in organizations, both in the public and private sector, nonprofit, for-profit, to really help them approach AI and AI adoption, again, in a very responsible, thoughtful, accountable way. So maybe I'll stop here.
Thank you so much. Such important work and so much alignment with Tech to the Rescue's work, giving like a real true meaning to our partnership and partnering such important initiatives nowadays. Lisa, I know that you come from a slightly different angle as a digital sociologist and responsible AI practitioner. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about your work and what drew you to this space.
Yeah, absolutely. So hi everyone, so lovely to be here with you. And Cyril, thank you so much for hosting this conversation. And I feel very proud to be part of the She Shapes AI community and to be able to share this forum with Julia, who I get so much inspiration from. So I joined the Responsible AI, do we want to call it a movement, a practice, because I was a researcher. So I returned to university after working for a few years as a journalist, and I did my master's degree in digital sociology. And it was through that I really learned about the impact that technology was having on society and the increasing datafication of society. I went into user research where I was, looking at how products were being used by people, and I started to then, from that research, identify some of these impacts that were being impacted by individuals, but also by, the wider communities and groups that they were belonging to. And it was through that research lens and that research approach that I started to do more and more work in the responsible AI space, because I saw firsthand the impact that this technology was having. So a lot of the work that I do now is I continue to do research work, so working with organizations to help them identify the impacts of their technological innovations and also the AI work that they are doing and that they're embedding into their products and services. And then also through doing that research, helping them identify impacts and then working with them to develop AI ethics frameworks, practices and processes in order to help to mitigate some of those impacts, but also identify opportunities for growth and innovation. Because when you look at the world through a different lens, you actually identify some of these new opportunities for growth and innovation. And I think ethics should never only be seen as a risk mitigation tool, but also as an opportunity to spur on innovation.
Mm-hmm. Really interesting trajectory, Lisa. I'm really glad to have the opportunity to chat with you and learn a bit more about this topic here with you both, Julia and Lisa. And maybe before we dive in, is there like one thing, and maybe broad thing, you wish more organizations understood about responsible AI?
Julia, you jump in first.
Yes. So responsible AI should not be an afterthought, really. And it's something that needs to be core to every AI adoption, every AI strategy, every AI governance framework. It really needs to be at the center. And I think it already, I refer to something that Lisa Thalia said. It should not be an afterthought. It should also not be looked at as a barrier to innovation. To me, actually, it's a precondition for innovation and for technology that really serves the broader public and really can address problems in a very long-term and systemic way. So this is what I hope also we will be able to convey during the conversation today.
Yeah, just to add to that, I think, one of the biggest things I see with organizations is that they say, oh, we can't do responsible AI because I don't have an AI strategy. And and I don't know who will do responsible AI. Responsible AI is really everyone's responsibility who is working on AI within your organization. And you don't have to wait for a strategy or for somebody important within the business to actually start doing responsible AI. You can start very simply by asking a question around, why are we even using AI to solve this problem? And that is a very easy first step to take. So that would be one of my big things. I would say that one thing I wish more organizations understood about responsible AI.
Yeah, so that's an interesting segue to talk a little bit about like what's at stake when like ethics and responsible AI become sort of like a checkbox, right? So Lisa, I know you've described technology as a system rather than a product. And when organizations adopt AI and focus only on compliance, from your perspective, what parts of the system are they failing to see?
Yeah, so one of the biggest challenges we have right now in the industry is that for a very long time, responsible AI was was named as ethical AI, and the ethics community was doing a lot of great work to get people to think a little bit more about what does good look like when we implement AI into our products and services and our organizations. Now it's become much more of a compliance issue, and responsible AI is becoming a little bit more, it's being defined more in terms of compliance. When we only see it in this way, what we're failing to see is that ethics and responsible AI is a values-driven approach. It's very proactive. It's about being really anticipatory. It's about understanding what might be changing in society, right? Because what you're trying to do here is you're aligning your AI innovation and your product development with the outcome being to build and sustain trust, to reputation, long-term social capital that we don't see within the system if we only define it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's very interesting. And Julia, in your experience, what does it actually look like when an organization treats AI AI ethics as an afterthought? Like, what are sort of some of the consequences that come to mind from what you've seen in cases in the past?
I would say there are many different consequences. Let me zoom in on three main ones. The first one, I think, is organizational. And to me, AI adoption in organization is not necessarily a technical issue. It's more of a human issue, right? It's really about taking the people within your organization, your staff, your team members, etc., really along the journey. And so we often talk about AI adoption gaps or adoption disparities within organizations, right? And I think a crucial thing here is to understand that a lot of people within organizations actually have concerns around AI. And this goes back to the values, for instance, that Lisa Talia was talking about. That we don't really know what the tool is supposed to do. We don't really know how it's going to impact our work. There might be biases in the data. Are the resources deployed in the right way, etc., etc. And so if these concerns are not being taken seriously, this erodes trust within organizations, right? And this is really, really it's dangerous to underestimate this trust issue, right? If people within an organization feel that AI is being deployed without them having a say, without their concerns being taken on board, then adoption will not happen, or it's going to, the adoption gap will widen more and more, and resistance within the organizations will increase. So that's an organizational concern. Another is reputational, right? If you don't take ethics and responsibility seriously, this will backfire, right? Someone will have to sign off on these decisions. These people will be accountable, and then if you realize that suddenly there are privacy violations, there are algorithms that are biased, there are PR issues, it's going to backfire. And it's not only damaging the organization, it's also damaging, the leadership. So that would be the second one. A third one is maybe strategic. We are often seeing this race. We need to adopt AI as fast as possible in our organizations, because otherwise we're lagging behind. But, I would like to make the case that actually, if you accelerate without alignment, without understanding the values, without actually understanding why you're doing what you're doing, right? This clearly does not, might increase a frenzy of activity, but it will not increase results. Again, it will not increase trustworthy results. So if we're moving ahead without guardrails, without putting systems in place, this again, right, it's not a competitive advantage. It will actually lead to more work, to the need to then rearrange, take a step back, damage control, etc., etc. That is not something that you want, and it's something that, if you're taking ethics and responsibility seriously from the outset, you would avoid.
It sounds like a really big challenge for the type of work you do to help people understand that's the order of how to do things, particularly in such a competitive and profit-driven market, right? But so just to close a little bit this section, where do you see right now the biggest gaps between what AI governance frameworks require and what actual responsible practice like you're proposing actually sort of demands?
Yeah, so if I may, I'll jump in here first. So when it comes to what AI governance frameworks require, they require organizations to meet a number of legal minimum duties. So it's about meeting statutory and regulatory mandates. Now, how we've seen organizations do this is this moves into the compliance function within an organization, which is sort of that upper operational level within a business. Now, the reason that that can be quite problematic is because I've worked with many teams and I've run many workshops on this. And I ask the teams and workshop attendees, how many of you know who your compliance officer is? And very seldom do any hands go up in the room. And I ask, how many of you know who your data protection officer is? Once again, very few hands go up in the room. And so one of the things is that we have this organizational literacy gap that exists between the people who are doing AI ethics in the compliance function and those individuals who are actually doing, who are doing the work of AI governance in the compliance function, and those individuals who are in everyday production, right? Who are doing the product and service design and are actually doing the work, and who might not even know really what their minimum legal duties are because they're just trying to ship the next product feature. What responsible practice actually demands is an external conversation with your affected stakeholders, with your customers, with your partners, because responsible AI is all about aligning with those moral and societal expectations. It's about understanding what values mean something to the people that you are delivering products and services for. Very often, the responsible AI conversation is voluntary, it's industry-led, it's not necessarily legally binding or enforced by authorities. And so there is something there about it being very proactive, very values-driven, very context-specific to your industry, to your sector, to the people that you're working with. Responsible AI isn't just a one-size-fits-all solution, the same way that the law is, the way that the law is applied to all. Responsible AI requires certain organizations to really dial up transparency or dial up privacy or to dial up fairness. And so, but if you don't have that conversation and you don't understand what is important to your constituents, to your affected stakeholders, you're never going to be able to know that. And so that is the gap between an internal conversation that happens within a particular layer of the organization versus those individuals who are working in products and services who should be having that external conversation to be able to build trust, reputation, long-term social capital, all of those really good outcomes that mean a lot to your customers, to your partners, etc.
Thank you, Lisa. Julia, is there anything
I think Lisa Talia has said this so beautifully, so I don't think there is much I need to add. Mainly only to reinforce that, responsible AI is clearly not something that one person in the organization does. It really needs to be something that, crosses the different departments, divisions, leadership, staff. Everyone needs to be involved and engaged. The only add-on that I would have.
Thank you. And yes, as you just mentioned, we talked a bit about sort of parts of the system that we fail to see, consequences, building trust, social capital. And that's taking me towards, let's talk a little bit about what happens when the theory goes, into practice, what good practice looks like. Maybe you could share some example of your own work from organizations you've seen where responsible AI practice actually led to genuine better outcomes. And in that case, like how and what made the difference?
So one of the organizations I worked with was a civil aviation organization. And before I arrived at the organization, one of the challenges product teams were having is that they would go into a product sprint, develop a product, get to the end of that process, try to get that that product live or in a beta format, and it would fail the compliance checks. And so one of the things that I did when I came in is I started to look at how the product development lifecycle was actually built, right, and how it was structured. And one of the things that we found is that all of the compliance checks were happening right at the end. And so one of the things that we did is we had those conversations. We needed to bring everyone together, because one of the things that you learn very quickly about AI is it doesn't respect any of your silos that you have built and structured within your own organization. Responsible AI and AI development requires you to be able to have conversations with lots of different people and break down those silos. So what we did was we completely redesigned the AI product lifecycle so that the teams, product teams, were having conversations with data privacy officers, with cybersecurity teams throughout the very early stages of discovery, so that they were already aware of where the red lines were, what they could and couldn't do, and also to try to explain to those teams who don't work in the world of product what a discovery means. What does an alpha mean? What does a beta mean? You know, when we're talking about working on an alpha, we're not meaning we're going to go live into an environment and push this out to the public, but you have to educate like the people within your organization about the work that you're doing. So there's a huge part of this work requires active collaboration. It requires dialogue. It requires relational design within your organization. And it really, like Julia said, like, don't try to squeeze it in at the end. Like, you have to do this from the very beginning, and you have to break this into your process. And one of the major outcomes that we had from that work was by redesigning this, by bringing people closer to the work earlier on, we actually sped up the process. We actually used ethics and responsible practice and design as a way to make the teams much more efficient. So for anyone who ever says to me that ethics slows everything down, my experience is that that is absolutely not the case, because I've seen firsthand how that can actually improve things in the long run. I have lots of examples, but I'm going to pause there with just one and hand over to Julia.
Yes, I think what you wanted me to talk about is a little bit the focus from SheShapes AI, right, Ciro, when we were having our previous conversation. So I think something that we discussed before, and is why women's leadership is important in that space, and how it changes the way AI is being designed. And again, I would like to bounce back on something that Lisa Talia had said earlier, right? It's looking at the world through a different angle. It's really understanding other opportunities, looking into problems that are there, identifying other challenges, but also opportunities, and really accessing different kinds of markets. And when you look at female entrepreneurs, they tend to, and that's interesting for Tech to the Rescue, I'd love to have a conversation on this, they are 3 times, according to stats, more likely to found impact-driven businesses, right? And so if we really want for AI to help us address some of our core problems and societal problems, these are impact problems. These are the hard nuts to crack. This is not just building another, fancy platform to track how I sleep. Not that this is not a nice thing to have, but really this is about really addressing some of the core problems our societies are facing. And if we're not doing this, if we're not bringing women into the picture, who very often are very close to concerns of communities, then we're really missing out on this. And if you want to have, I put this here just in preparation of this conversation. There's this amazing book called Invisible Women by this wonderful author, Caroline Perez, who wrote this just a couple of years ago. And it's clearly not outdated. It really explains how data bias influences everything around us. And we can't have the same thing happening in AI, right? We cannot have a technology that's mainly developed by a very limited sort of constituency with very limited perspectives, right? And I don't say that women are getting everything right? It would be the opposite would be the case if only women were developing AI. Then I would be saying, where are the men? Let's bring the men in, because what we need is actually everyone to chime in together and to develop this technology and to develop the use cases. So this is why I'm really making the case that this is something we all need to work on together, in the spirit of really creating a technology future that works for everyone, and that is not just in the interest of some big tech companies and tech giants. I don't know if that's helpful.
Yeah, it's really meaningful. Yeah. So I have actually in our community today we are a lot of nonprofits and social impact organizations, and as you know, often these organizations have limited resources and also limited technical capacity. So maybe a relevant question for me to make in their behalf is like, what should they prioritize when they can't do everything?
You go first,
Well,
Julia.
I would say good news, because success in AI and AI adoption is rarely a technical issue. I think this has become clear, when we were talking now in the past 20 minutes. The barriers are really more, internal, they're strategic, organizational, and cultural also. This also means that resource constraints, right, and maybe less technical capability are not that much of a disadvantage as you might think. And one thing that I would like to emphasize is, the organizations you're working with at Tech to the Rescue, and many of the ones we're working with at SheShapes AI, these are impact-driven organizations. They have a clear advantage over many, many other, maybe resourced corporates. They have a mission. And they have clarity. They know exactly why they're doing what they're doing, and why it's important for them to achieve, their aims, and also whom they're working for. And that to me is a clear advantage, right? Because in order to get AI right, and I think this is something we've already touched upon, the first question is, why are we doing this? Whom are we serving? What is the tool supposed to help us with? Yes, and what is the purpose, right, in general? So this is a filter that I think is very clear for social impact organization. That actually is a huge advantage. So maybe a lot of the work, Lisa, that you might be doing with organizations that are outside of the mission-driven space, is already done within. So this is a clear strength. You know what you want to do. You know whom you're serving. So this needs to be your guiding principle, right? This is something that you can be really proud of. This makes you, it's a huge advantage compared to others. It already gives you a head start. And another thing, maybe, as social impact organizations, very often you work with entities, with populations that are vulnerable, right? And again, here, ethics is an advantage, right? It's something that will increase your credibility. It's something that will increase your reputation, your stance, because this is something that you can very credibly advocate for. So I would say, don't look at, maybe resources in this context as something that is putting you back or behind. You have so much, already that gives you a head start in the AI, in the responsible AI adoption scenario.
Yeah.
So you touched. Yeah, sorry.
No,
Go ahead,
I was going to say
Lisa.
that's a beautiful, beautiful answer. And, if I can just build on that, I really think there's something around focusing on the problems that you need to solve and want to solve. Really making sure that you are being problem-centric as opposed to tech-centric. Don't be tempted to try to use every new tool that is available, because all of these tools don't have to be used and pointed to every problem. As much as Silicon Valley likes to pretend, AI can't solve all of the world's problems. Very often, many of the world's problems, like Julia said earlier again, are about people and processes, and not just about the technology itself. So, for me, the very first step would be prioritize your problems that you're looking to solve, and double check those problems against the strengths of AI. AI is very good at pattern recognition, prediction, forecasting. You can use it in marketing material, to be able to try and speed certain things up. But really look at the problems and look at the strengths of AI, and almost do a mix and match process, and prioritize those areas where AI can have the biggest impact to the appropriate problem that you are looking to solve.
That's a really interesting panorama. Like you touched, Julia, on sort of common misconceptions of thinking that responsible AI, where technical capacity is sort of a constraint, and you're telling us, social impact organizations actually have a head start because they have all this previous background and work on their values and alignment and understanding who they serve. And Lisa, you're giving us sort of where to start, right? What's the realistic first step? And in this context, I would like to ask you, maybe Julia, what are some red flags to watch for when you're sort of evaluating an AI tool or a vendor, things that should make a nonprofit stop and think twice before jumping on board?
Yeah, thank you for this. I think it's a very practical question, Ciro, and an important one. And it's something that I hear a lot. We're doing these trainings, in particular with leaders and organizations who are in this situation, right? They are being confronted with vendors who are, pitching AI tools, solutions, etc. And they then say, but we don't know, what the basis of our decision making should be. And one of the things that we're telling them, the first things is, do you actually understand what they're trying to tell you? Do you actually understand the language? Do you actually understand the jargon? Because this is something not only with vendors, but in the general AI discussion, jargon plays such a huge role. And if we're using words that are very difficult for everyone to understand, this also makes this entire AI conversation very mystical and magic. And it's this magical tool that will drop from the sky and solve all our problems. No, obviously that's not the case. And so, when you are listening to vendors or someone who really tries to sell you a tool, a red flag to me would be that you don't understand what they're actually talking about. So what you then need to do is to tell them, please break this down to me. Explain in layman terms what this means, what the consequences are, what the benefits are, how this will influence our workflow, etc., etc. So really don't shy away from asking questions. You are not dumb. That's really important. If you don't understand what they're saying, this means that they have not explained this in the right way. And sometimes they are hiding behind vocabulary in order to be able to sell more, because then they are the experts and you are not. So I would love to encourage you to try to challenge this.
Yeah, I love that piece of advice, because I actually have some, an anecdote from my own experience where I was with a client on a call with a vendor, and they said something in particular about how the model was trained. And I asked a question about, that doesn't really make sense to me. Do you mind explaining that in a different way? And the sales person on the call paused and said, I actually don't know how else to describe that, and I'm not really sure how to explain that to you in a different way, because I don't really know exactly what it means. But I'll go and ask our team of data scientists to give me a different answer. And so just to let you know that sometimes the people who are selling you the products don't even quite understand some of the terms and the language they're using. So if something sounds too good to be true, it probably is. And if you really need to be able to unpack some of those questions, you should. Even though AI is a topic that we're talking about almost, it feels like every day, and it's bombarding us every day, it's in the headlines, it is still an area of specialism in technology. Now, if you were at a dinner party and suddenly you were talking to a cardiologist and they started to talk about open heart surgery and the new techniques on how to do a heart transplant, if you asked a question and you said, I don't know anything about surgery, no one at that table would think that was a ridiculous question for you to ask, because you're not a cardiologist. And I feel you should apply the same principle to artificial intelligence. If you don't know anything, if you don't know what they mean, ask a question, because you are not an AI expert, and they have it. It is their duty as an organization who is selling you a product or a service to responsibly answer the questions that you have. So it is in their best interests to do so. So hopefully that is a good anecdote to share with you all.
And is there a tool or framework or a resource that you'd point out nonprofits if they're just getting started with responsible AI?
So there are a few tools, a few frameworks that I think are really worth looking into. The Alan Turing Institute has put together a fantastic toolkit on how to do ethics in practice. The OECD has also got some really good work that they've done of creating white papers and also helping people understand how to do ethics in practice. And UNICEF have also created some really fantastic toolkits. The one that I'm particularly thinking of is a guide to red teaming, so how you can test certain systems. And those are three that are top of mind that I can really very strongly recommend.
Yeah, I would defer to Lisa Thalia for this, definitely.
And as I understand that She Shapes AI is running an executive training program, right, in 2026 as well. If you would like to tell us a little bit more about it.
Very happy actually to do this. So when I started She Shapes AI, I said we will not do training because everyone is doing AI training these days. So seriously, why would we? But then throughout last year, more and more people, in particular women in leadership roles, right? And you can define leadership roles in many different respects. But the importance that they have responsibility for decision-making within organizations came to us and said, listen, we feel that you have created a safe space. You have all of these entrepreneurs who are developing AI to address real problems. They have this very convincing, responsible angle to their work, and we really see the benefits of AI. Now we're within our organizations, and we're asked to partake in decision-making. We're asked, to basically say to vendors, yes, no, and we just don't feel equipped for this. We don't feel that we don't understand the technical jargon. We also don't feel like we have the confidence to be part of these conversations. So if you were to offer something to really address this, help us address this, we'd love for this. And so then based on this, we've actually developed a training program that responds to needs that were addressed to us. So it's really something we're not trying to update everyone on technical capabilities. You've already understood in the past, 40 minutes that this is not something I believe in very strongly. It's really more about understanding, asking the right questions, understanding the frameworks, and really looking into what's the purpose, what are the values, what are priorities, what are benefits, but then also to be able to defend your convictions with confidence, which is very important, because very often you might be sitting in a boardroom or you might be sitting in a leadership meeting and someone is, who maybe just because he has a tech background will be very convincing in the way that they defend an AI tool, for instance. And if you don't have this background, and I would argue you don't need to have it, you need to be in a position to weigh in as well, right? And so this is precisely what we're doing. It's really about AI fluency, strategy, and confidence. So if this resonates with any of you, you have the QR code here, but also please feel free to reach out to us anytime. And I would say we work with amazing trainers from our community. And as it will not surprise you, Lisa Thalia is one of these amazing trainers.
Yeah, thank you. And that's one very practical sort of step that one could take in this direction. But I'm also curious because in our audience we have a lot of social impact organizations and nonprofits, and maybe you could share some ideas on what role you think civil society and nonprofits play in shaping AI governance, and like beyond adopting it, but shaping how it's influencing how it's regulated.
You said, Leah, we'll just jump in and then I let you talk because it's something that I'm really passionate about.
Yeah.
I think that civil society organizations are not shaping the conversation enough, right? It's something that is happening to them, but it's not happening with them. And that, I think, is something that really needs to change. When you're looking at the discussions or where AI decisions are being made, this is mainly the tech companies, and if we're lucky, a little bit of policymakers in the mix, but clearly not civil society organizations, nonprofits, etc. So I would say, if you are working in the space, also understand that you have a role to play here. So don't just only let this happen to you in your organizations in a passive way and try to adopt as quickly as possible. Obviously, please do adopt AI in the way that Lisa and I were just talking about, but you can go beyond this, right? You can take a stance, you can You can, when there are panels happening, conferences, ask questions, right? Challenge thinking. You have agency here, you have a role here. And I think this is a critical moment in time to actually weigh into the discussion on how AI is going to influence our societies, our worlds, everything really that surrounds us. So there are not many fora for this to happen, but there are some. There are organizations, there's, for instance, the European AI Fund that focuses very much on supporting organizations, nonprofits within the EU with funding for their work. There are many more. So my appeal would be, don't wait for anyone to invite you to the table. Grab the chair and weigh in, right? Do this with publications, blog posts, at events, but really we need the voices of the civil society sector in this discussion.
Yeah, just to build on that, I think so many civil society organizations and not-for-profits have both the ear as well as the hearts of the communities that they serve and those affected stakeholders. And you have such an important role to play in being a conduit for those voices that are very often not captured by policymakers and by technologists. I think there is such an opportunity to go into your communities and to be able to have these conversations and to spark this dialogue with them and capture some of that feedback and have the responsibility to ladder that up to some of those policymakers. You very are often in positions of influence. You have very good reputations. You have the opportunity to speak to your board members who are part of other organizations or involved in local governments in some way, and to really advocate for the voices that you are in contact with and that you serve. And I think that's an amazing opportunity. I also think there is a huge need for more community-based standards and community-based norms to be established. And I don't see this enough coming from not-for-profits and civil society. Very often you are not in competition with one another the same way that the private sector is. There is an opportunity to form coalitions, to be able to create standards of practice, to be able to share case studies, to be able to establish not only just best practice, but what does next practice look like? That anticipatory piece that I spoke about earlier. And I think there's such an opportunity to lean in and engage in those ways and not have to wait for a government or a private institution to be able to create standards and then ship those standards from the top down. There is a huge opportunity to be able to create a ground-up grassroots movement here, and you will be stronger together and have a much greater influence together if you are able to do that.
Wow.
No pressure.
Yes. Thank you for the encouragement or encouraging. First and foremost, I think myself, because I'm right here with you and our audience, but really it does feel like it's the right time for everyone to stand up, and especially the civil society organizations that are beacons in their communities, in their societies of hope, of valuable social work, who really understand these topics better than nobody, not necessarily responsible AI, but values, human values, and how important it is for us, as a global society to really defend our rights, and that technology is used for the benefit of all human or sentient beings. So I receive this call to action personally as well. And maybe with that, as I speak this question, I'm inviting in the chat, if anyone has a question, we can have space for one or two more. But in the spirit of starting to close this conversation, I'd like to ask you, what is one thing that you feel the field still gets sort of wrong about responsible AI, and maybe one thing that you are most hopeful about right now?
That is a great.
You can choose one of them. You don't need to answer both.
That is a great question. Yeah, I think just to go back to kind of come full circle from where I started, I guess. I think, the one thing is you don't have to wait for something to happen before you begin. You can begin a responsible AI journey today by asking questions. Like, that is the first easiest step. Ask questions, be problem centric, think about the values of your organization and how those values you would like them to kind of manifest in the work that you do. So, if transparency and building trust is an important value to your organization, think about how you tell people about your use of AI. What kind of transparency notices do you have? What kind of regular communication and dialogue do you start to engage in? So these are all small steps that you can start. You don't have to wait for that sort of magical AI strategy to land before you can feel confident to begin. The thing that gives me hope is conversations like this that weren't happening 5 years ago and certainly weren't happening 10 years ago, but they are happening now. And I would also say it gives me hope that there's a huge number of people who regularly stop me at conferences or after workshops and say to me how interested they are in responsible AI and how they want to learn more. And that for me is incredibly hopeful. This is not a topic that people are shying away from or trying to escape. I see lots of people from all walks of life and from all organizations wanting to engage and participate in the conversation. And I love the diversity of opinion and the collective action that is starting to build around this.
Yeah. Maybe if I can just add to this very quickly. What I'm seeing, what gives me a lot of hope, is that I receive messages from many people within very tech-heavy organizations who turn to us and say, we want to know more about what responsibility actually looks like. So I see a trend also, coming not only from where we might suspect it, right, but also from more tech-heavy contexts. And something that also gives me a lot of hope, in particular when I look at our work at G-Shapes AI, for our last round of the awards, we've doubled the entries. So there is so people are noticing. And when you look at, and I hope some of you will be able to join the conference on the 16th of April, we'll also have the possibility to join remotely. This is when we'll announce the winners of this year's awards. And you will see the amazing work that is being done by these ladies in the AI space. And you can really see in practice what responsible AI looks like. And the fact that we have received so many applications, double from last year, and they are outstanding. And you really see the potential of AI to help us address some problems. Clearly not solve all our problems, but be very specific in proposing solutions. This gives me a lot of hope, and I think we need to see these examples much more and talk about them much more to really understand what the benefits can be.
Thank you so much, and also thank you to the audience. I would like to also share an opportunity that Tech to a Rescue. We have the applications for our AI Impact Scaling program are currently open up until the 8th of April. It's a program that is designed for social impact organizations, nonprofits, with proven interventions that are ready to grow, that are looking for removing bottlenecks and for long-term enablement to scale from going from a prototype to a meaningful impact multiplication, and getting continuous support through pro bono development, partnerships, mentorship, infrastructure, and a community of practice with amazing stakeholders like G-Shapes AI, like we've seen here, that is designed to provide sustainable resources to scale. So this call for applications is open until the 8th of April, and if you're inspired, we hope to receive your interest. And I'm going to put the link and the QR code right now on the screen. As I also thank you, Julia and Lisa, for this really interesting conversation. I take away quite a lot from it, and I'm sure our audience does as well. Particularly for some reason, to me, I am left resonating with the aspects and the element of building trust and social capital, because sometimes this type of capital, although it's like super powerful, it may go unnoticed in such a competitive, profit-driven sort of industry. And it is personally, I was left resonating with that, and with the value that already social impact organizations have within them, this capital they have to get started. That it's not about lacking, tech resources. They already have a foundation to kick off this process, which is stronger than many other type of stakeholders. So thank you so much for being here with us today, and I'm very much looking forward to attending your event on the 16th of April. Would you like to invite people?
I mean, I'd love, so if you are in London, please join us. We will be at the LSE, we'll have the auditorium. It's going to be very interactive, and you'll just see a lot about what responsible AI looks like in practice. You see entrepreneurs, but we'll also have really interesting discussions, and it's going to be a great place to make connections and mingle and start these conversations also that Lisa Tellier was talking about. So if you're in London on the 16th or can come to London, please join us. But again, I also think we will have a live stream. So if you are somewhere else and you can't be in London, it's going to be less possible to be there, within the conversations, but you can still see what's happening. And also, I should say, we are organizing regular online events as well. So please, go to our website, register for our newsletter, and we would love to see you around. And I also want to thank Tech to the Rescue. I think you are such an amazing partner for us, and I'm really, really happy about this conversation.
Awesome. So there's the link for the AI Awards. Looking forward to see you there, Julia. Lisa, will you be present as well?
Unfortunately, I will not be there, but I will be there in spirit and hopefully be able to join the live stream.
Awesome. So with that,